The Starr and D'Amico Show, brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same-day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel.
Hi, I'm Audrey. My parents, Chuck and Evie, are too busy caring about your pets, so I'm here to remind you to check out a family-owned store, Little Bear Pet Supplies. Can you believe it's been there for almost 30 years? They know that your pets are family too, and they've made shopping easy this holiday season, with fun toys and healthy treats that you won't find everywhere. They even offer fast home delivery, and my brother and I sometimes help too. Please shop local this year.
Thanks, Audrey. Come visit us at 4152 St. Catherine Street West, littlebearonline.com, or find us on the Uber Eats app.
Welcome to Game Day. For the second time this week, Marco, the Montreal Canadiens will get a team that played the day before and won. It's Sam Montembeault's return to the net for the Montreal Canadiens, his first start since December 2nd, as Montreal's trip through Florida continues with a stop against the Panthers, who are nipping on the heels. You know, before we get into the subject du jour and some NHL trade matchmaking through insiders Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnson of The Athletic, Marco, a quick take on the Montreal Canadiens and Florida Panthers and Sam Montembeault's return. This is an anticipated matchup, and I would think, for me anyway, the Montembeault angle is the number one story for me. I think a lot of people, a lot of Canadian observers are very curious to see what the former number one goaltender can do as he gets his first start in 28 days.
Yeah, well, 28 days in the NHL for sure.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that when it comes to Samuel Montembeault, you have to keep in mind that he agreed to the conditioning stint to go to Laval. Not many people in his situation would have agreed to that. In fact, they would have balked, laughed at it, and probably closed the door. But he was a team player. He accepted to go down for the betterment of the team so that he could find his game again. And now he's coming back up. Like, that doesn't happen without a guarantee that he gets in at some point after that conditioning stint. Because what's the point here? The Canadians are trying to get goalies going so that they're not depending on a 21-year-old to find success, which seems to be the overwhelming will of the majority right now. And I think you need to play it. You need to play it smart. You need to play it very smart, and you need to be very careful with your choices. I feel like with a guy like Montembeault, you don't just forget how to play hockey. I know that a lot of people are in a "what have you done for me lately" kind of attitude. Goaltending is 50% preparation, 30% confidence, and like 20% technique. And if you can get all three, you're running, you're cooking with gasoline. And so we've seen Samuel Montembeault put up ridiculous performances. Now it's going to be up to him to be able to earn it, because one thing is true. He's on a very short leash. And if he is not able to bounce back in the next game or two in a convincing manner, then the Canadians are going to have deeper conversations.
Very much looking forward. I hope you can join us on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. for our live recap of the Montreal Canadiens and Florida Panthers. In the meantime, Mr. D'Amico, it looks like the staff at The Athletic was having a little fun, and why not? I mean, we're 10 weeks away from the NHL trade deadline. Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnson got together for a two-part series titled NHL Trade Matchmaker, predicting where top targets would go by the deadline. And there are a couple of names that have floated around, and a couple attached to the Montreal Canadiens. But number one on the list is now 35-year-old winger. He's currently day-to-day for the Nashville Predators, Marco. It's Jonathan Marchessault. Chris Johnson has the Montreal Canadiens as a potential landing spot in terms of trade matchmaking, saying in the piece at The Athletic, This is a move that would certainly sit well with Marchessault, who is important given the fact that he has an NMC in his contract, no movement clause. The former Conn Smythe Trophy winner would bring experience to the NHL's youngest roster and should be able to add offensive pop in the Habs' top six forward group. Facilitating a trade for Marchessault would necessitate some money going out the door, with Patrik Laine's $8.7 million cap hit the most obvious candidate to go. The Quebec native would be a popular addition to the fan base. And again, Chris Johnson or Pierre LeBrun are not reporting, speculating on this trade on the cusp of happening. They're playing matchmaker. Do you see it as a match between what Ken Hughes and Jeff Gorton are trying to build and Jonathan Marchessault adding to that vision?
No. I honestly, like, I know that he's been having a better season this year. It's kind of hard to not have a better season considering where he was last year.
Yeah.
But when you look at, I appreciate what he did in Vegas, but again, he just turned 35. He signed for 3 more years. And I take it back, actually. He started the season much better, but he's only got 10 points in 28 games.
And 7
Again,
goals. Yeah.
just really on the downside of his career. Like, I get he brings experience, but I feel like that experience is now irrelevant with the acquisition of Phil Deneau. Right? Like, Phil Deneau is played in playoff games, is playing center. You already have Brendan Gallagher and Josh Anderson. So you have Deneau, Gallagher, Anderson as your experienced forwards. Where I think the Canadians need experience is in the top six, but that experience doesn't come at a frame of 5'9" and 180-ish pounds.
Right.
That's kind of the problem. It's more of the same. And the Canadians said at the beginning of the season they're looking to diversify the amount of profile or the types of profiles that they have. And I think that's the biggest thing you need to take into consideration here is that when you have Cole Caulfield in your top six, I don't think you could afford to have a Jonathan Marchessault in your top six. Not the way he's been playing of late. And then there's the business side. Yeah, Jonathan Marchessault has a no movement clause. Keep that into consideration because that no movement clause, absolutely terrible if the Canadians decide buyer's remorse, we want to move him, because it's the same problem the Nashville Predators are in right now. And the idea of being able to move out Patrik Laine's deal, the Canadians only saved $3.2 million in doing this trade, but then would get piggybacked for 3 years on Jonathan Marchessault's contract as he just turned 35.
Right.
So that means that he would be 38 at the end of his deal.
Oof.
This is a player, unlike, for example, Nazem Kadri, who continues to play at an elite level. This is a player that's consistently just getting worse and worse and worse and worse through his performances. You could chalk it up to Nashville being terrible. That's fine. We've seen good players play very, very well on bad teams. But like, I think we're at I don't think the Canadians need to take this risk. They've created good cap structure. They haven't taken on much risk in terms of contract other than being, handsomely rewarded for it. I don't see it. I understand he would probably waive his no movement clause to go to Montreal, and that's totally fantastic. I just, he had the chance to sign with Montreal. He chose to go for the money. Stay there.
Just to push back for a second. And now listen, I mean, you raised some great points. The age, the term left on the contract, to me, to use a word, is petrifying. I'm just at the age and the term left, Marco. Just for the record, I'm out. But to play devil's advocate for a second, he's 2 years removed. He scored 21 last season. The year before that, his last as a Golden Knight, Marco, 82 games, 42 goals. I mean, did his game drop off that dramatically? We're talking about a guy, 2 seasons ago is coming off a 42-goal full season campaign. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think his game dropped off. Absolutely. And, that's the beauty of a contract here. Why does a 42-goal scorer only get $5.5 million on the open market?
That's a good question.
There's risk. Risk. Right? When you're signing a guy for 5 or 6 years at age 33, that helps lower the cap hit, right? And so the Canadians offered a shorter term contract. In fact, the contract the Canadians offered him would have ended at the end of next season. I really don't see them going above and beyond that to try and go and get a guy like Marchessault. I get he offers the experience, but the Canadians have said they're willing to be picky. When it comes to getting a bottom six center, a guy like Phil Deneau, left shot, experience, contract expires at the end of next season, way less risk. Way less risk. And it
Right.
affords you time for other center prospects like Beck, Florian Jacki, Hayden Papanikis, Logan Sawyer, you name it, to develop and eventually come in and maybe take those roles. I don't see it with Marchessault. Marchessault would block a Michael Hage. Marchessault would block an Alexander Zhuravsky.
Mm.
And the risk certainly outweighs the benefits. Certainly outweighs the benefits. If you're looking for a winger for this team, that winger has to be a physical goal scoring winger. Right now, Marchessault's neither.
Mm.
And so I just, even if it meant being able to save $3.2 million this season, the Canadians aren't in a win now moment. So there's no need to saddle yourself up with this contract and then, have to potentially buy it out before the end of it because he doesn't find his game.
Other names to talk about, and I guess we can tie this into, how attractive or how attracted to the trade market are the Montreal Canadiens, on the cusp of busting through into 2026. We talked in the past about Kiefer Sherwood, right? Vancouver Canucks. If you're looking for a little bit more jam there, Calgary Flames winger, um, Blake Coleman, 12 goals in 39 games, another aging forward, 34 years young. I mean, is there a level of interest? Is the perfect trade candidate even available in your opinion for what the Montreal, because I don't disagree with what you described as the wants and needs of the Canadians, because I see it through a similar lens. I think a lot of people that pay attention to the Canadians know they're lacking a little bit of size. They need a little bit more jam. You know, is that guy out there for them right now?
I don't necessarily think so. I don't think that the perfect player that the Canadian, and I keep saying this, Canadians are holding out for the market to shake loose, right? Did anybody think that at the moment of this recording, the Winnipeg Jets would be tied for last in the NHL?
Good point. Good question. Yeah, no, no.
No, right? Let this season continue to play out, and some surprising players may become available, and that's when the Canadians could pounce. Like you look at a team, for example, like the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets are a very interesting team. If they decide, we may need to change course or sell off some guys, or maybe see, what we can do with X player or Y player. Like there are a couple of guys on the Winnipeg Jets that could be of interest, right? Like to me, that's exactly what other teams are going to be looking for. I don't necessarily know that Montreal and Winnipeg are necessarily good trade partners, but it's just an example. Like that could shake loose. If St. Louis decides to completely blow it up, that changes the dynamic as well. There could be opportunity to go and look at a Pavel Buchnevich, which someone like Jeff Gorton knows very well. There's the opportunity to maybe have the incredible conversation of Robert Thomas, like we've talked about, if that ever comes to pass. The same thing happens with the Seattle Kraken. The Seattle Kraken have Jared McCann, who has 1 year left on his deal after this one at $5 million. That's an interesting piece because he's always been a good goal scorer. Winger, center, who cares? But he's always been a good goal scorer. He's a guy that worst case can complete the top line, and then you'd have the top line and then Slavkovsky, Demidov, Kapanen for now. That would be a strong 1-2 punch. And it's a guy that you can keep into next season that has experience, that's good in age, that could make sense for them. So there is an opportunity here in terms of being able to find other guys. I just feel like the market as it stands right now is not as fully developed as it should be because the identifiable sellers aren't there. But if I had to look, we've been talking about the Seattle Kraken for a while, right?
Yes.
Seattle is a team I'm watching because offensively it is terrible, terrible. One of the, if not the worst offensive team in the league. And they're just right there in the playoff race, like 39 points in 37 games. They're staying in it somehow. The Predators are slowly pulling themselves back into it, and Vancouver is starting to win games, but really Chicago and Winnipeg and St. Louis seem to be the teams that
Yeah.
aren't necessarily in it. The problem now is that in the Western Conference, it's almost like the teams woke up and now everyone's vying for a playoff spot. The
Mm.
only ones that seem truly out of it are Chicago, Winnipeg, and Vancouver.
Yeah.
In the
Winnipeg's
Eastern
wild.
Conference,
Yeah.
Columbus is dead last with 40 points with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're tied, but they're only 4 points out of a playoff spot.
Yeah.
It's such a quick thing, and so that makes your window of players that could be available very, very small. Like the Bruins were the top of the Atlantic 3 weeks ago, and they are now sixth in the
Dude,
Eastern Conference. Like,
look at Buffalo. Buffalo won again yesterday. They've won 9 in a row. They're now on the same points as the Panthers.
yes,
Right. They're obviously in the wild card race, very much in it.
right, very much in it. And I think when you factor in the buyers, for example, you look at the Colorado Avalanche, the Dallas Stars, the Minnesota Wild, the Edmonton Oilers, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Carolina Hurricanes. Those are for sure buyers in this year, like when we get to the trade deadline, right?
Yeah.
Identifiable sellers: Chicago, Vancouver. We'll wait to see if Kevin Cheveldayoff like actually waves the white flag on the season. We'll see. I think it's a little early, but I mean, with the way they're 7 points out of a playoff spot, though with 2 games in hand,
Yeah.
it's still anything's possible at this point. One team that really interests me, I really want to see where they go with this, is Utah, because Utah wants to make big trades.
Right.
But if they're not in it, and Logan Cooley's injury is continues to be a long-term issue, that's a team to watch out for. But again, it's Seattle. If Seattle's luck runs out, they are a prime seller because they're in no man's land at a consistent rate every year, all the time, except for that one year where they surprised everybody. So that's the team that I would watch. But that's what makes a trade board at this time of the year so difficult
Yeah.
to predict, because right now the parity is too high. Are there teams that you should watch for? Yes. St. Louis, Seattle, Chicago, Vancouver, Calgary. I would go into the Eastern Conference. I would venture, if they continue to lose the way that they have, watch out for the Pittsburgh Penguins sell-off. I don't think it's a Sidney Crosby sell-off. I think it's more of a Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell, Eric Carlson sell-off. And then you'd look at maybe the Leafs trying to recoup some assets. You look at Columbus; they're still kind of in it, but that like there's no identifiable sellers. The Rangers are perhaps to me the team with the most blow it up potential that I would keep an eye on, because aging core, not getting any better, constantly just in the middle. And right now in their division, the Flyers and the Islanders seem to be pulling away a little bit, with the New Jersey Devils also a team to watch for, because for me the Devils perhaps the team with the most amount of pressure in the in the Metropolitan right now.
Yeah.
I feel like Tom Fitzgerald, after missing out on Quinn Hughes, is going to try to make a big move, because I feel like he's sweating it right now in New Jersey. So there are options, but nothing available as of now.
Also seems like a team like Carolina. Every time like there's a rumor floating around, Carolina seems to be somehow, name dropped in a conversation for whatever player happens to be out there. But we'll see what happens.
Well,
And something tells me,
Carolina has no choice.
I agree.
They
Yeah,
have a roster. They have a win now roster, and they
correct.
let a bunch of veterans go and didn't
Yeah,
properly replace them.
yeah,
So they have holes in their lineup. They were in the Phil Deneau sweepstakes, and they tried to trade Jesperi Kotkaniemi. That would have been really funny,
yeah,
to LA while Mark Bergevin was still there. I just don't see that. They're always looking to make a big trade because they have all these extra assets from the failed Rantanen move.
hmm
Say failed in the sense that they weren't able to extend him.
yeah,
And they just want to try to replace that scoring touch. And we've even heard the potential of a guy like Andrei Svechnikov being available in the right deal. So again, that's a team to watch. Definitely a team to watch. Carolina is going to be probably one of the more aggressive buyers.
And so, like, let's round out this conversation again. Riffing off Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnson in the Athletic, playing matchmaker, and Chris Johnson thinking Marchessault and the Montreal Canadiens would be a match. I mean, I think that was broken down thoroughly here in this quick conversation here. And thanks for liking and subscribing to the channel. But the one part that is most believable in the hypothetical matchmaking of the Canadiens and the Nashville Predators is Patrick Laine perhaps on the block in that situation and his $8.7 million cap hit. I mean, there's just no, we were asked this on a live chat, I think on the Sunday live show that we do at 10 a.m. Where does I think one viewer asked, where do you see Line fitting? And to me, I don't see him fitting. I don't see a fit. So that seems, Marco, to be the most realistic possibility that if the Canadiens are inclined to make a move, and I strongly believe this, I think we're going to see kind of this extreme parity. I think we're going to see the Montreal Canadiens perhaps stay a little bit quiet, even though they did trade for Phil Deneau, right? I think a lot of things are likely to change when they get back from Italy and the Winter Games. But in the here and now, you want to tackle the Patrick Laine thing here quickly on the reality of him and the Montreal Canadiens and the lack of future, in my view.
I think it's a difficult call because you can't put him back on the first power play wave, right? I think either Demidov or Budzuk are going to be in those spots.
Yeah.
It's already, for better or for worse, in the top what 7 in the NHL right now in terms of efficacy is the Canadiens power play. So it's not like they're performing poorly; they're performing quite well even without Line. That's a hot potato subject that that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton are going to have to deal with. We've talked about the potential of maybe retaining 50% on him and trading him to another team that's in contention that has a significant amount of salary cap space. I talked about the fit potentially with the Carolina Hurricanes, for example. That's a team that, like did a similar thing with like Max Domi, for example. When Max Domi was traded to Carolina, they were able to kind of swoop in at the last minute and take him on the cheap. I'm sure that if the Canadiens retained 50%, there would probably be a team that would be interested. But we'd have to see at that point a team looking for a power play specialist, a guy that could play on their second or third line in a sheltered role. I think I could see it, but I don't know that the Canadiens have made up their mind on that right away. I think it's just something that we look to. And the other thing to keep into consideration with when it comes to Line is we have not yet seen a healthy Patrick Laine on this team, like a fully healthy Patrick Laine. Last year, Patrick Laine came back from a knee injury, which he opted to rehab as opposed to do surgery on. And, having missed all the time that he did the year prior and the midpoint of the season, ran out of gas by the time we got to February, March. And I think it was very evident. And then he injured his hand. And then coming into this season and having that, that abdomen injury, like significantly hampers your mobility and your ability to pivot on the ice, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not sure what kind of Patrick Laine you'd necessarily be getting because it is a contract year. So he's going to want an opportunity. And does that play into it? That's these are going to be the real questions to ask. So there is a world where the Canadiens could be both buyers and sellers at the trade deadline, though I don't know that you would get much even for 50% of Patrick Laine. But I think to open up the salary cap space that they would have, it may be a venture that Kent Hughes looks at. But again, I suggested in the Athletic, I don't believe that they would be willing to take on 3 years of a player in his mid 30s just to get rid of that contract. And I think that's the thing. I don't think it's a must move Line at all costs. I even think the Canadiens would be willing to give him a shot in the roster first and foremost before making a decision like that. But what I would say is it could be a possibility. For example, if they have a deal for a bigger fish once the time comes, right? And that's like we were talking about perfect fit. Before Buffalo went on a 9-game winning streak, the perfect rental fit was Alex Tuch.
Right. Yeah,
Alex
that's
Tuch,
changed.
Alex Tuch is exactly the kind of guy that you would be able to plug in on the top line next to Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki, and they would run roughshod. And then you'd have a second line that we know now as the kid line that would be able to run roughshod. Now that Buffalo is in the thick of it, you can now remove them from the teams that would be potentially selling, unless we get to a point in March where Alex Tuck still refuses to sign an extension and they're not in a playoff situation. And then that will draw a significant amount of interested parties. But
But
I don't see the Canadians getting in on a bidding war for a rental player.
yeah, the timeline just doesn't sync up. So there you go. It's kind
It's
of
not the year. It's not the year.
I get it. I get it. I get it. Kind of where they're at. I mean, they've been doing a lot of heavy lifting internally, right? And still waiting for the pieces to mature, so to speak. It's game day. Habs and Panthers will be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. to recap it live with you. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and all that to say, yeah, matchmaking, just not a match. There's Marco D'Amico. Follow him at MN D'Amico. And don't forget, live after every Montreal Canadiens game. Marco, thanks for the insight. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, guys. Have a good one.